full time here at the Gaelic Grounds in Limerick, and Tipperary are through to the Munster final after winning by 323 to 222. And at the final whistle, it was nothing but boos ringing out for referee James Owens, and most of that is down to the black card and penalty call that happened midway through the second half, or sorry, I should say early in the second half, 38th minute. Jake Morris was breaking through from the left wing, and he was taken out unceremoniously by Aidan McCarthy, but people were absolutely furious that this was given, because the question was he through for a goal scoring opportunity? And I mean, the new rule has come in, the new penalty rule, and most people aren't overly happy with it, like cynical play and so on. But Conor Cleary looked like he was coming back to be able to sort of shore things up at the edge of the square and make sure it wasn't a direct goal scoring opportunity. And Clare fans were absolutely furious with James Owens at the time, and it was so costly for Clare, because they played quite well in the first half. They led 2-11 to 113 at half time, but this was a massive blow. Tony Kelly had just put them 2-12 to 113 ahead, and a free out in the sideline that you'd normally have, maybe a yellow card for the challenge by Aidan McCarthy, ended up being a penalty that was buried. And in the 10 minutes that Aidan McCarthy was off the field, Tipperary went on a run of 2-4 to 2 points. Now, anything that could go wrong did go wrong for Clare, in the sense that rule obviously really went against them. And I suppose every team knows the rules, but I don't know, it comes across as a bit of a nonsense. It's an infuriating sort of a rule, I think, for a lot of people. And then Seamus Callan got a goal, big slice of luck. Conor Cleary had been tying him up pretty well throughout most of the game, but Callan got a little bit of an inch here, took a shot, and somehow it evaded Eibhear Quilligan, who no doubt will be very frustrated, because he made a couple of really good saves in the first half from both Callan, and he had another excellent one from Jake Morris. But that put Clare very much on the back foot, because they were 3-15 to 2-13 behind at that stage. Bubbles O'Dwyer, he started knocking over more points. He was kind of floating off. Himself and Jason Ford at different times were floating around the middle area, but Bubbles was floating off John Conlon, who had a very good game at centre back again. Obviously, he's minding the square, and it's sort of a dual task to mind the square and also your man at the same time. But the third quarter, there was no real goal threat from Clare, and obviously that was partly down to the fact that they were down a man, but they just couldn't get the ball up on the front foot the same way as they did in the first half. They still did have a couple of chances late on. Mark Rogers turned Paddy Maher, who'd slipped over, and actually, in fact, the first goal of the game came for Ian Galvin in the 6th minute on the back of Paddy Maher slipping as well. So that would be a frustrating afternoon for the full back from Thurles. And a good matchup for Tipperary that they found in the first half was Paddy Fitzpatrick. He's a big man. The guts of 6'7" playing wing back. Michael Breen went on him. He scored 1-1 in that first half. A really, really good performance, and possibly could have even added more. But Clare, a lot of positives. I mean, they've been excellent in the win over Waterford, and probably could have won by far more. They didn't have as many wides here, but they still. A shot conversion rate of 24 out of 44 isn't particularly good. Now, some of those were balls dropped short into the goalkeeper's hands, and there was at least 5 by about the 50th minute of this game. So that's definitely something that Brian Lohan will be fairly furious about. I wonder, they also just late on, when it was 2-18 to 3-23, they had a triple goal chance. Mark Rogers, his chance was saved, that one where he slipped past Paddy Maher. Then Aidan McInerney, or sorry, I should say McCarthy, he was hooked. And then Aaron Shanaher, he had another chance as well. And Shanaher missed plenty of chances in the first half. A great man to get out and win ball in front. And he did that against Barry Heffernan a lot in this game, but unfortunately he couldn't capitalise. But Clare started so well; they were 1-6 to 4 points ahead. Tony Kelly was inside. Now, he didn't get scores early on against Cathal Barrett, but they had a great battle. Eventually, the Ballyea man, he started knocking over a few scores and got that goal towards the latter end of the first half, where Ian Galvin flicked the lovely ball to him, and he blasted into the back of the net. You couldn't blame Barrett for that, absolutely not. But Tipperary were definitely all at sea in that back line. But of course, a run midway through the first half of going 1-5 to nothing, that really drew Clare back, kind of undid an awful lot of their work for, I don't know, from the 10th or 11th minute to the 24th. They'd only just one shot in total, and that was a Ryan Taylor point. And plenty of the forwards for Clare, who started really well in the first half, were getting on the score sheet. It didn't quite happen. Like David Reedy, he didn't get in as much much ball. Ian Galvin, he was unbelievable in the first half, got a point in the second. Ed McCarthy never truly got into it. Shanaher's shooting let him down, and Ryan Taylor was taken off also. So all the things that were working in the first half didn't work so well in the second half. Tipperary upped it in a big way, the intensity, but still it was a pretty flawed performance from Tipperary. I mean, 26 of 44 chances buried. Last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chances of the game knocked wide, so having been well ahead in this game, 8 points ahead at one point, they let Clare back into it, and John Kiley was here watching up beside the press box, and he left in the 69th minute. 70th minute was just ticking, and he left. He'd seen enough, but Clare still managed to get another 3 points, knocked over their last 4 chances of the game to kind of tighten it up a nice bit. But Tipperary, I think, going into that Munster final against Limerick, trying to stop Limerick from lifting the Mick Mackey Trophy 3 years in a row, they're going to be on the back foot. A couple of the subs made decent impacts, Alan Flynn in particular. Dan McCormick very good around the middle of the field. Noel McGrath strangely taken off midway through the second half, didn't have it all his own way. John McGrath, again, didn't have a great season last year, and maybe that was down to an extended club campaign. But he probably is going to be disappointed and in fear of his place the next day. Jason Ford got a few scores. Bubbles with 4 points. Callan, he's not long back from injury. Obviously came back in the second last league game against Westmeath. Probably going to take him another few games to get going. But there was good signs from the likes of Jake Morris, and the half-back line didn't, I wouldn't say that Limerick will be full of fear for that either. But Tipperary overall happy to get through this game, especially after how poorly they performed in the second half against Waterford the last day. Probably weren't entirely sure what sort of a performance they gave here, but it's certainly a big step up from that. We'll need an awful lot more the next day. Clare head to the qualifiers. It's looking like a bear pit in there. We know Laois or Antrim are going to be waiting for somebody. Also the likes of Galway, Wexford, Waterford and Cork. So that's going to be fairly enticing stuff to see there. But it's going to be Tip against Limerick next in the Munster final, and Tip just squeaking through here.